Hi everyone, my name is Hafiz Kadir. You can call me Riz. I'm a fellow member of Institute of Managers and Leaders. Moreover, I'm a management consultant and artificial AI business strategist. Today, I have the honor to have IML CEO David Pich with me on Zoom. Welcome and thank you very much, David, for joining me this morning. I'm very appreciative of that.
Thanks, Riz. Absolutely delighted to be here, especially given that you're a fellow of the Institute. I'm always happy to talk about leadership, and I'm especially happy to talk about leadership to one of our fellows. So I'm delighted to be here.
Okay. Thank you very much for that one. With permission from David, I would like to provide some information on David's career's highlights and also about his role at IML. David Pick is the Chief Executive Officer CEO of Institute of Managers and Leaders, Australia and New Zealand, where he is responsible for IML's 3-year leadership matters strategy and defining IML's internal culture as well. He has extensive corporate leadership experience in HR, communications, and professional association sectors and has held senior roles across various industries in the UK and Australia. David had completed his bachelor and master's from the University of Cambridge, the UK. He had his BA honors from Western Sydney University as well. David is the author of 2 books, both are related to leadership. David is a marathon runner as well. And before we
Too
begin,
kind, Riz. Thank you.
yes, welcome anytime. Before we begin our discussion today on the topic future workplaces, their management, and the desirable leadership style, let's begin with a small request to David. David, can you please tell us briefly a little bit about yourself and your aspirations regarding IML's future?
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. Of course. Yeah. So I took over the role as the chief exec of what was AIM, the formerly called AIM, the Australian Institute of Management, in 2015. So pretty much maybe about 4 weeks ago, was my 5th anniversary in the role. And I think it's safe to say that the Institute has changed beyond all recognition since 2015. I mean, primarily, the major change is that we've rebranded and we are no longer AIM. And in actual fact, we've divested of the AIM brand, and the AIM brand remains in the market as a pure training and education brand. And, it has the AIM MBA and all of those kind of things. But we, IML, the Institute of Managers and Leaders, no longer has an association with that brand. We're not a training and education provider. We were in the past, and that was our history, and we stand very proud of that history. But actually, we're a member association, and at the heart and the core of what we do is we advocate for and we create better managers and better leaders. And whilst we believe that formal education programs have a role in the development of better managers and leaders, we believe as an institute that the picture is much bigger, wider, and broader than that. So we're involved in the development of better managers and leaders through a number of products and services, and those don't include formal education and training. We believe that theoretical approach to management and leadership is better provided by other people, be it the universities or the private education providers. So we provide what I would say is the practical side of management and leadership. And we do that through a series of development programs, through our member services, which would include mentoring, but crucially, we provide the foremost, most prestigious accreditation for management and leadership. That's called Chartered Manager. So for the first time in Australia and indeed in New Zealand, because we are now following a merger with the Institute of Management New Zealand, we are now the Institute of Managers and Leaders Australia and New Zealand. We offer that charter to managers and leaders both in Australia and in New Zealand. So for the first time, you can become a chartered manager, and that is the gold standard for management and leadership practice. And we offer that, and we have round about 1,000 chartered managers and many, many more currently going through the process. So at our core, Riz, we believe that management and leadership is a profession. You can become a professional manager and a professional leader, just as you can be a professional accountant, a professional lawyer. We believe that management and leadership is so important that it is a profession, and that's the new institute.
Very good.
Oh, and sorry, to answer your question directly, my aspiration as the CEO of this prestigious institute is to see the professionalization of management and leadership accepted throughout businesses and throughout industry, because at the moment, I don't think that management and leadership is accepted as a profession. And whilst it's not accepted as a profession, there are all sorts of issues, both at an individual level with mental health, harassment, bullying in the workplace, all of those kind of things, and at an institutional level. If you take the Banking Royal Commission, every single thing that came out of the Banking Royal Commission was a pure example of a failure of management and leadership and a lack of professionalism at management and leadership. So my aspiration is to see management and leadership accepted as a profession. And in a kind of metaphorical sense, and in many ways and in a literal sense, I won't sleep properly until management and leadership is accepted as a profession.
Well, thanks, David, for sharing that with us. I'm really impressed, and I really like the idea because I've been in this profession for a long, so I always think of it as a profession, and I think probably under your leadership, certainly you will achieve that goal very soon. For the
Hope so.
Certainly, I'm pretty much sure. For the listeners, though mainly today's session is more like a discussion, I wish to have David's views regarding the future workplaces, their management, and the desirable leadership style. All right, so shall we start? So here is my first question to David. Um, shall I?
Yeah, go.
Okay.
I'm ready. Hey, let's just say this, Riz. Let's just share this with your listeners. I think when we first spoke about this interview, I think it was in the school holidays, and I was away with my kids in Noosa, and you very kindly offered to send me through the questions, which I think is great. You know, I think it's always worth sharing the questions just in case there's a curly one that kind of stumps us. And you will remember, and it's worth us sharing with your listeners, that I refused in a very nice way. I hope I was polite, but I think what I said to you was, I don't need the questions. Let's just have an open conversation about management and leadership. So let's just disclose to your leaders, to your listeners, I have no idea what you're about to ask me. And let's hope there are no really curly questions. Otherwise, I'll be stuttering and stumbling through this interview. So off you go. Ask your first question. I've got no idea what it is.
I testify whatever you have said is completely true. The reason I actually wanted to share was not to let someone know. It was more like to have some sort of idea. I do not share all the question all the time. I just try to
Right.
70% and mostly in the form of idea. Anyway,
Yeah, sure.
thanks for that. I 100% agree with you. Okay, so here we go. My first question. What leadership style do you think is the most relevant in today's businesses scenario? And what style will be the most desirable for future organizations or businesses?
Yeah, what a great question. And I think I'll give a very personal answer to that. I get a little bit concerned about that concept of leadership styles.
Oh.
Okay, so I think we would be well advised to move away from this idea of set leadership styles. Okay, and the reason for that, I think there's a number of reasons for it, but I'll summarize a couple of them. The major reason is a style of leadership. This idea of a style of leadership being something innate and something that exists on its own, I think is quite problematic and troublesome. And I think it leads us into a direction that potentially with management and leadership we don't want to go into. I'll give you an example. There is often a view that managers and leaders must be extroverted kind of people. They must be the kind of people that can stand up in front of people and talk and communicate and be outgoing and gregarious and all of those kind of things. And that kind of outgoing, larger than life leadership style is something that I think is quite often espoused. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think more and more we need to see leadership as a personal approach. So what I much prefer to talk about is not what a leadership style is, but how individuals can deliver leadership using their own skills and attributes that they have. Now, of course, what we have to just take account of here is that people invariably need to develop themselves in certain areas. But there's absolutely nothing to be gained, in my view, by saying this is leadership and you have to fit into this to be a good leader. There is absolutely no reason why somebody who is much more introvert or quiet or much better at one-on-one conversations cannot be just as good a leader as somebody who's outgoing and gregarious and larger than life and all of those other phrases that I've used before. So I don't know whether leadership styles get us very far. What I think we need to think about are what are the attributes that we typically see in good leaders, okay, and not what does good leadership look like. It's not as if it's a checklist or a tick box, you know. So I think it's perfectly it's perfectly acceptable, not necessarily easy, to be a very, very good leader if you are more of a kind of quiet, introverted kind of person. In actual fact, those kind of people tend to be, they tend to spend more time thinking things through before they reach decisions. So I think decision making, for example, is a key quality of leadership. Okay, so a leader has to be able to make really sound, good decisions, but there are many ways of doing that. And I don't think a style of leadership, a one-size-fits-all style of leadership is useful these days. I think that was probably how leadership was thought of and considered 20 or 30 years ago. So I think, let me give you an example. I think these days, showing part of yourself, being authentic, being self-aware are very, very useful traits of leadership. But you can show and illustrate that in many different ways, depending on the kind of person that you are. Because the problem I have is if you say that leadership is a certain style, it's very exclusive to people who don't tend to fit that style. So I don't necessarily think that style of leadership assists the conversation. That would be how I answer that.
So that's fine. I mean, I respect your point of view, and thanks for sharing this with us. But still, I mean, if you suppose leave the leadership style out of it, so still, I would like to know a little bit. What are the desirable attributes nowadays, and what would be in the future? So, if you would like to describe a little bit more elaborate, please.
Let's explore that, Riz, a little bit. So we've written, you started off in your very kind introduction to me talking about the 2 books that the Institute has written. And you're right, we've written 2 books. And the reason why we wrote 2 books is that we believe at the Institute that leadership is kind of 2 halves of the same circle or the same coin or whatever. On the one half, we think that you've got what we call the perspiration of leadership. It's the hard work. It's the stuff that quite often gets forgotten but it's the stuff that leaders have to do in order to be leaders. Okay,
Yeah.
and this is the stuff. This is the stuff that is very difficult to write about. It's very and actually the first book that we wrote, The 7 Skills of Very Successful Leaders, was a very difficult book to write because very few people write about those things. What the vast majority of people write about and talk about is the second half of leadership, and that's what we call the inspiration of leadership. So so at the Institute, we believe that that leadership is part inspiration and part perspiration. It's the attributes that you have, and then the things that you do as a leader. And too much emphasis is put on the attributes, we believe. And that's because the other stuff, the hard work, is too difficult for people to write about. And it does sound a little bit boring as well. Like you see all of these self-help books telling you what you need to be as a leader. You know, you need to be inspirational and all those kind of things. But actually, where we think leadership starts is with the hard work. So let me give you an example. A leader needs to be able to set strategy.
Okay.
So you can be the most inspirational person, you can be fantastic on stage, you can be, you know, a great communicator, but actually that's not going to get you very far because you have a board of directors that you report to, you have, you know, shareholders, you have an organization that you have to lead both as people, but also as a business. So you have to be able to set strategy. So the very first chapter of the very first book we wrote was called Setting Strategy. So a leader, the 7 skills of very successful leadership, number 1 is setting strategy. So how does a leader go about setting strategy? Before you've motivated your team and before you've set your culture of your business and before you've got up in front of everybody on stage and led, you've actually got to be able to set strategy. So one of the skills of leadership is that ability to set strategy. Now, you can learn some of that at university. You know, you can do an MBA and talk about setting strategy and all of that kind of stuff, and vision and mission and purpose and strategy. But actually, leaders need to think about that. It's no good. And by the way, that's not just leaders who are leading organizations. If you're leading a team, whether that team's big or small, or a department, you've got to have a strategic direction that you're taking that team in. So that would be one area. The second area, for example, in the second chapter of the first book that we wrote about the skills of leadership, is we believe that once you've set your strategy, you have to define the culture. So the second chapter of the book is defining culture. So you have to set your strategy, and then once you have your strategy set, you define culture. Now, interestingly, there is a school of thought in management and leadership, and that's the school of thought is that defining culture becomes before setting strategy. And the book that we wrote fundamentally disagrees with that. We believe that strategy is everything. You set your strategy, then once you have your strategy, your vision and your direction, you then define your culture. Now, all of that is the role of the leader. And the attributes that the leader has are not necessarily irrelevant, but unless the leader can do those things, the leader is not going to get very far. And that's why we wrote the book about the skills of leadership before we wrote the book about the attributes of leadership. So if you put that to one side, let's move on to answer your question directly. Let's take the skills you need as a leader to be taken as read. What are the attributes you need? One of the attributes we believe is, and one of the things that I think is becoming more and more important. So this comes onto your question about the future of leadership. One of the most important attributes of leadership, we believe, is ethical leadership. So you need to have integrity as a leader, and you need to have an ethical grounding. And we believe that ethics in leadership is going to become more and more important. And that has been seen in the Banking Royal Commission, issues around the Catholic Church. There are a whole number of examples that we can think of a failure in ethics of leadership. And when those failures happen, the organizations are put into crisis, and in many examples, they don't recover. So ethical leadership, as time goes on, and as social media becomes more and more prevalent, and the light of public opinion is shone on leadership action more and more brightly, ethical leadership is going to become more and more important. And that's what the second book is about.
Okay. Oh, brilliant. I'm happy that I asked you this question because you elaborated quite in detail, and good to know that. Thank you very much, David. So my next question is, what is your vision of the future workplaces in Australia and around the world? And how long do you think it will take the business world to get there?
What a question that is, Riz.
Thanks.
I think it's, I can't help but be skeptical. I'm naturally quite skeptical when people talk about major changes in the workplace. This idea of the new normal. We've entered a new normal. Having said that, there is a part of me, and I'm talking very personally here. There is a part of me that is potentially a bit less skeptical, given COVID. Okay, so when we talk about the new normal, what's the future of work going to look like? If you'd have said to me 12 months ago, look, the future of work is that people are going to be working at home, and the city centre, work in the city centre is dead, and people will be doing podcasts over Zoom, and people will be travelling for business less, I would have said that you were absolutely mad, and that's not going to happen. And part of me still believes that. I am a little bit skeptical when people talk about the new normal, that when all of this current pandemic is over, we're all going to still want to work from home. We're all going to still want to communicate on Zoom. Business travel will be detrimentally impacted in the long term. In many cases, we've heard it all before. When the dot-com bubble burst back in, when was that? That was the 90s, the mid-90s. Everybody said that things were going to change. When 9/11 happened, I can distinctly remember when 9/11 happened, everybody said that air travel would be changed and changed forever. Now, of course, it was in a security sense, but it wasn't long, a couple of years, I think, until the level of air travel was back at pre-9/11 times, although, of course, security checks and all of those kind of things did change things. So the future of work, I don't think, in my view, is going to be impacted in the long term by this pandemic. What I think this pandemic will do will accelerate some of the trends and changes that were happening already. So let's unpack that a little bit. I don't think that we're entering a period of time where everybody's going to want to work from home, and Zoom will continue to be the way that people meet as standard. I don't think that's going to happen. What I do think is going to happen is a continuation of the rise of flexibility in the workplace. So I think the future of work is around a blended work environment. So flexible work contracts, the 4-day working week. And I think that the pandemic, in many senses, has proved that some of those ideas work and has accelerated things. But I do not think that it's the death of the head office. I don't think, for example, that all those organizations that have said that people can work from home for the next 6 months will suddenly be selling their head offices and all of the buildings in the city centres will suddenly become gyms and personal training centres. I don't think that's the case. I think we will start to move back towards people going into work, but I do think people will be much more flexible. So I'm expecting organisations to be much more creative with people's contracts, with job sharing, with working from home, but I don't think it's the end of the office. So essentially what I think I'm saying is those trends that were happening prior to the pandemic in many cases have been accelerated and proven to work. So I think the future is flexibility. Employees will be demanding things that they were thinking of before that through the pandemic has been shown to work. So for example, at the Institute at the moment, we're investigating implementing a 4-day week, a 4-day working week. The pandemic to me has proved that that's possible. My staff can be as productive in 4 days as they were in 5 days by doing things differently, by not being in the office as much. The travel time going to the office sucks up so much of the working day that if they want to work from home a couple of days a week, I think that's absolutely fine because it's productive and it cuts down time. I think the pandemic has proved that to be the case. That's what I think the future of work is.
Oh, thanks very much for that. A little bit, I would like to add something to it, because when we discuss the future workplaces, there are two different. I mean, as per my understanding, there are two different um, sets of workplaces. One is this for services, the other one is for goods production. So,
yeah.
I mean, I agree with you, whatever you are saying, and it's certainly you have given us a perspective. So the services side, you have described a bit. Would you like to describe a little bit more about the goods side, the workplaces which are actually busy in producing goods?
Oh well, look, I think in one sense, I would only in my answer to your previous question, Riz, I think I was talking mainly about management and leadership led positions.
Oh, okay.
When you're talking about manufacture of goods, like factory manufacture and the actual production where it relies on production lines and factory based things, I would still think that a level of flexibility may come into those areas, but I would be less comfortable in talking about that. I'm talking mainly about my own constituency, which would be my members, which would be primarily in management and leadership office-based positions.
No, thanks very much. I mean, I just
What's your view, by the way? Because you've got a bit of experience in, the future of work and AI and stuff. What's your view on manufacturing processes? I'd be interested to hear that.
Yeah, I think probably everything which is possible to be automated would be automated in the future. And there will be people there who will be managing a hybrid workforce in a place like a factory or in a where the goods are produced. So somebody will be probably controlling the robots, virtual assistants, and the human beings. So this is my perception, and I think probably they are heading towards that area. So this is my perception. And for the managers and leaders, I think probably I agree with you whatever you're saying, but I think probably there will be one more step. There will be one more step to this one. They probably will have to think what area they need to what skills they need to learn to work in a hybrid working area where you work from home, you work from different positions. You need to learn different skills. Like many people didn't know Zoom before, but now they are aware of it, and they are learning day by day. Every day there is a new update. So on the other hand, they also need to learn how to manage the hybrid workforce. It's not like, I mean, we can leave to IT people that they will manage the robots, because the productivity IT people, they will not be responsible for the productivity and efficiency of the organization as a whole. So manager will be. So this is my view.
I do think I think there's something else actually interestingly is that I think's come out of this pandemic. So I think it comes back to my view that we would be well advised not to think that the current situation is the new normal. And I'll give you an example of why I'm a bit skeptical about that. I don't think the workplace is purely a means of production in terms of people's time. I don't think the workplace is purely that. So I don't think you can only look at the efficiency and productivity side of things. I think when you're dealing with people, there are other elements of the workplace that are important. So you're not just dealing with people that you can say, right, you're going to be based from home for the next 5 days. So I'll give you an example. I've got a number of staff who we pivoted to the work from home, of course, because we had to, because all the offices closed down. And it took about 6 weeks for us to start getting requests from staff to go back into the office. And that was because they were missing the social contact. That was also because in some cases they were living in shared houses, and the cost of real estate is such that not everybody lives in a 5-bedroom house with a swimming pool, and some people were living in 2-bedrooms apartments with another couple, or so the dynamic of human interaction and the human condition has to be overlaid on the future of the workplace. We're not all, I mean, you're sitting there with that in a studio with a robot behind you. We're not all robots. We have feelings, and we have the issues that come with being human and living in a society. And I have a number of my staff who were living alone in 1-bedroom apartments in Melbourne who were feeling incredibly lonely. And I think work isn't just about the means of production. It's not just about efficiency and productivity. And I think this idea of the new normal, everyone's going to be working at home on a computer and looking at Zoom. You forget the fact that work is about meeting with colleagues, discussing ideas, shaking people's hands, doing a deal, celebrating the deal. And people's sense of self comes from all of those things. It doesn't just come with being, a number on a page and being productive. So I think this idea that everything's pivoting to something else forgets the fact that people actually develop much more slowly than that, and there are relationships and interactions. I mean, interestingly, I'm taking we've just had a very successful membership renewal period. In actual fact, would you believe we've had the most successful membership renewal period at IML for 10 years. So we've renewed more members during the pandemic than we've renewed for 10 years in the Institute, which is absolutely incredible when you think about it. However, I actually don't think it's that incredible. I do think the reason why our members have stuck with us is that there's this sense of being a tribe, being a part of something, getting something from your membership. Anyway, that's irrelevant. What I'm saying is, yesterday I went into the office and I announced to the team that to say thank you for the membership renewal, we're all going out for dinner the week after next. And you should have seen the looks on people's faces. Oh, we're going out for dinner. People haven't been doing that with their work colleagues for almost 8 months.
Yeah.
And I don't think that social connectivity and interaction should be ignored through this.
No, thanks for sharing this with me and elaborating it. Look, I was giving you the idea what I think of the future, but because I'm actually predominantly from HR background, human resources, I'm a certified member of RE as well. So my role is basically been all the time to deal with people. I'm a people person. So I completely understand, but that part was what I was trying to say, that that's the future outlook. for me, what I perceive. But when you actually deal with these ones, the hybrid working workforce, where the human beings are there, robots are there, you have to have some sort of empathy to actually deal with people. And the people, they always need social connection. Pandemic actually rushed the future on us. So it will go away, certainly within 3 months, 6 months, certainly it's not gonna stay always, all the time there. So the people, when we deal with people, that's a different, that's why I was trying to say that we need to actually develop, because two different sort of skills a manager should have: dealing with human beings, dealing with robots, virtual assistants, digital workforce. Then you combine your skills to manage those and get the productivity out of it. The human beings part we cannot ignore, because I mean, otherwise the even the robots won't be there if we do not look after the human beings, because the
Yeah, great.
most
Yeah,
of the things that will be developed by the human beings, and whenever they will get stuck, the human beings will be there to assist them.
I agree. Yeah,
Okay.
I think you're saying the same thing, aren't we? Hey, the one other thing is that
Yeah.
I'd say is,
Yeah.
I think, and by the way, your listeners would expect me to say this because I'm the chief exec of a leadership institute.
Sure.
I think there is going to be more and more emphasis
Yeah.
in the future
Yeah.
on these things that we call soft skills,
Yes.
which, by the way, are not soft at all. They're actually very, very hard. So I think this is where what I'm saying and what you're saying starts to merge and combine. I think there's going to be a lot of automation of lower level transaction based stuff. And I think there's going to be an increase in, and we're seeing it already, in management and leadership skill, soft skill, these things that human interaction, communication, motivation, um, uh, being self-aware so that we can reflect, resilience.
Yeah.
I think more and more people are going to be expected to have a higher level of soft skill functioning. It's going to be no good in the future just to be technically good at your job. You have to be able to interact. You have to be able to critically think. You have to be creative, persuasive, making decisions. And this is why the Institute is in numerous partnerships with business schools and universities, because we see ourselves as providing the development skill side of things that complements the technical skill side of things that the universities are focused on.
Yeah.
And I think it's that combination of technical skill and soft or hard skill that I think is the future of work. And universities recognize this as well. Universities recognize that they can't keep pumping out accountants that have done an accounting course for 3 years and are graduating with little, not life experience, but little soft skill, little ability to lead in a very minimal sense, because a lot of people would leave university with very little leadership skill, but with a desire to learn more about leadership and management. I think there's a management and leadership revolution coming, where organizations will expect more of their managers and leaders, and they'll expect better performance out of their managers and leaders.
True. So we are happy that we are actually saying the same thing.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah. Um, that's an impressive elaboration, and the narrative of future workplaces appears to be very exciting. And from your answer, it also seems that it will be quite fascinating to observe those futuristic changes along with these skills and the way you have just elaborated. Thanks very much. So shall I move on to the third question? Okay.
Oh, we're only up to 3.
among the yeah, among the latest trends in AI hype cycle, which is maintained by Gartner, it's my understanding, includes small data. It could be translated as the medium-sized organizations are also trying to step into the race to reap the benefits of AI usage. In that context, Do you think it is time when the leaders of the medium-sized organization should start learning how AI, artificial intelligence, can benefit their organization instead of just relying on conventional approaches to compete in the market?
Hmm. Do you know what, Riz? I mean, you work in the AI. You work in AI.
Yeah,
Isn't that a question that you could answer? Naturally, I think that the answer to that question is yes. I think AI is becoming is going to be embedded in the future workplace. So I think there's a whole number of implementations and rollouts of AI that we don't quite understand yet.
yeah,
And I think that many of these are at the large scale, Amazon and Google and Uber and those kind of, you know, places, as well as, product fulfillment and all of those kind of things. Um, I wonder whether small to medium businesses don't understand what's coming and have some kind of fear
yeah,
of AI
yeah.
and have little understanding um, of the impact that it's likely to have on their business. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, actually, that's the sort of answer which I was expecting, and you have given the answer.
Mm,
So, complementing to your answer and to enhance the scope of this your answer, yeah, you're absolutely right. Basically, there was a big data available. All the companies, the big companies, they had big data, and if somebody wanted to, just roughly 2 years ago or 3 years ago, they were think 2 years ago probably they were thinking that everybody who needs to get into AI, they either need a big data, either they would generate themselves, or they would have somehow they would buy it. So now
mm,
they are bringing, because the not the all the big organization or even the big organization have the big data. So they are bringing this small data because AI needed a big data to work. That was the starting point. So now they thought, if you have a big data, that's fine. If you do not have, it doesn't mean that you can't actually get into AI. So they are transforming the model to bring a small data. Small data means like a simple medium sized organization can have. Small organization normally they don't have that data, but medium sized organization they will have small data.
mm,
So whatever data they have, because that's the most relevant data. If they buy from another company data, it won't work the way their own data. So if they have a small data, they can actually step into AI. This is encouraging for the medium size and small size organizations that AI is not for only big companies. You can also get into this one. Whatever data you have, try
mm,
to organize it so that you capture it, organize it so that you can use it. So if the medium
mm,
sized organizations they took it as initiative, and the managers and leaders start learning how to actually reap the benefits of AI. So this is an encouraging point for them.
mm. I think one of the tricks, or one of the tipping points, if you like, for managers and leaders of smaller organizations is the ability to understand, or the opportunity to understand, the benefit that AI can have on their business. And I think the AI industry, if you like, the people offering the solutions need to find a way of communicating that to the small and medium-sized enterprises, as they have done to the big enterprises. I don't know whether that is happening at the moment to the extent that it needs to happen.
Okay, so thanks for that. To add to that one, um, in fact, the big organizations like Amazon, Google, Microsoft. Now, Amazon is the major example. They have actually created the backend work. They are saying that
Mm,
who would do the backend work? You just take the AI model, and you can use it with your data. So they are, I think probably they are trying to communicate this one is happening, but at a bit slower pace. But
Yeah.
overall, what's happening? They got the backend work. They are doing backend work. You don't need to have a server. You don't need to actually need to develop, because the machine learning learns on its own. So you have the data, take the model, apply it. They will provide all the resources. They will charge you, and it is not actually expensive. So they will charge for their services, and then you don't need to have all the infrastructure for all these things. You don't need to hire data engineers at the beginning. You can hire one person, which is data analyst at the beginning, use your data, and you combine with those ones. And but the manager and the person who will do this one in the organization, that person should have the knowledge, and that person is the business decision maker. If that person has that knowledge, then actually it's really very easy to embed AI into the main services or production, goods or services production, and then you can reap the benefits.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Um, so thanks very much. I think management professional must be thinking about how to embed these ideas into their organization strategy if they listen to this one and make plans to achieve them. The fourth question is basically relevant to our previous discussion, but I just wanted to make it a bit clearer. What future skills do you think the future managers and leaders will need to have, not only to survive, but thrive in the futuristic organizations? I'm referring to an era where virtual assistants, robots, and digital workforce will be employed alongside human beings, known as hybrid workforce in a workplace.
I mean, I think in a sense, we agree. I think that is the answer to the question. I think there has to be. I think the key skill or attribute is the ability to be flexible. Flexibility. I think it's this ability to think flexibly and act flexibly. And there's going to have to be an increase in technical know-how. Technology know-how, not technical know-how, not technical skill, but technology.
Yes.
So a willingness to embrace, technology, databases, big data, small data, AI. Now, what I think is the saving grace in all of this is that the next generation of leaders that are coming through, and by the way, I'm not talking about my generation, perhaps I'm talking about your generation, I'm probably a bit older than you. I don't think it's my generation. I think it's the next generation that are coming through who will have grown up in a kind of digital world. I mean, let's be really honest here. My generation hasn't grown up in a digital world. We've existed as the digital world grew up, and we've cobbled our way through it. But I think it's that ability to embrace new technology, not to be scared of new technology, and to be flexible enough to change and switch from one way of doing things to another way of doing things. So that leadership flexibility, I think, is incredibly important. I mean, would you agree with that?
Yeah, of course. I mean, among other skills, you already have actually described these ones. Agility, which basically probably you are saying the flexibility, agility, and the technology, the mindset to transform and get into adopt the technology advancement, the era of digitalization, rather than ignoring it or waiting for something for someone to take over. So they should actually adopt it and transform themselves. Secondly, the basic thing among the basic thing probably among the leaders is the decision, the brave decision to embrace it, to transform themselves. It's not easy thing for the people who've been doing otherwise to act. In fact, will be a really bit hard because it's a personal change. It's a personal transformation rather than the organizational transformation. Organizational transformation probably will be easier for many managers and leaders because they've been doing, or they need to, they have teams to do it. But it's on the personal front that first of all, they should have a mindset to adopt this one. Then when they adopt this one, rather than leaving the empathy or emotional intelligence out of it, they should actually keep those things with them as well. Yeah. So
I think also in any process of change,
yeah,
and as soon as you start talking about the need to change and to embrace change,
yeah,
I think there has to be, and I think this is a word that we're going to hear more and more about, and we are at the moment,
yeah,
there has to be a level of resilience,
true.
because there has to be an acceptance. There's
Yeah,
going to be an acceptance that with change comes stress and pressure and impact on family life and social life and location, where you live and all of those kind of things. And I think there's an ability to have to bounce back, and that's where resilience comes in. So I think more and more the workforce and managers and leaders are going to need resilience plans. They're going to need things that they fall back on to cope with change, to
yeah,
recover from change, and to enter a new period. I think that's that concept of resilience, I think, is incredibly important, and it's going to become more and more important.
yeah. The adoption of technology systems, then the mindset, and secondly, there's one which I think personally is my personal understanding. The skill normally we are developing nowadays, project management. It will be really very imperative and very necessary, as a necessity for the will be necessity for the future managers and leaders, because rather than doing on long-term working, there will be small projects, 1 year, 2 year, and then the transition into another one. Rather than thinking that a career of 25, spanning on 25 years, it will be only 3 years, 5 years, 4 years, 2 years, 3 years, 1 year, or simple a project, whether it's a 1.5 week, something like this one.
I agree. I agree with that. Yeah.
Cheers, thanks. So my next question is, different leadership domains are converging and seemingly relying on the mastery and adoption of innovative technologies to lead. In that context, do you think technology and systems leadership is the future of leadership style in a work environment? I understand, and you said earlier that you do not agree with leadership style, but because I'm just trying to bring the question up to you, so it's entirely up to you. Whatever you think or whatever your understanding is, you are happy. I'm happy with all your answers.
So let's just explore that question, right? So so are you, when you say technology, so are you asking whether the leaders will need to have a deep and detailed understanding of the technology in the area that they're leading? Because I'm a little bit skeptical about whether that's the case or not. So is that what your question is?
Yeah, so I was actually trying to say in the question that what is happening, the management domains, like the people who are human sources, suppose as a one example, human resources management. They are human resources management. They are people who are dealing with people. Now you got influx of VAs, virtual assistants. You got influx of robots. You got influx of the digital workforce. Then they need to learn this skill. That's fine. I understand, because they can't actually just work with people now if they do not know the technology side. These domains, the IT people who were actually managing the IT infrastructure, they are also not totally capable to manage those robots, because it's different to whatever they were doing. Okay, so these domains are merging. So the people I am looking up, I'm actually finding in the global scenario, I've seen the technology, the firms who are actually tech firms who are rising to the front. The people who had the technology and leadership as a strength, they were managing everything. They had a technology advancement. They had the knowledge of technological advancement because they got degrees in them, or they had the mental capability, cognitive ability to learn these things. They managing those things, because when the domains are merging, the automation and the technology is actually trying to lead. It looks like that it is bleeding. So those technology and people, technology leaders, they understand the system because they develop from the scratch. So those technology and systems leader, it looks like they are leading nowadays. If you look at the tech firms and the in the USA and around the globe, those people are managing other things as well. So that's in that context I was asking, whether do you think the technology and system leaders it will be their leadership style in the future, which will be desirable?
I think I think just by process of elimination, there are going there are going to be a small number of people who absolutely understand the coming technology and the future technology and the use of the technology, who also have invested in themselves to have the leadership skill. So I think organizations are going to need a hybrid of all of these. I think they're going to need leaders who have the leadership skills, but not necessarily the technological skills. And I think they're going to need technical specialists who have the technical skills, but not necessarily the leadership skills. And many of those technical specialists either don't want the leadership skills because they don't want to lead people, they want to be technical. And many of the leadership type people are not going to want to have the technical skills or have, if you like, the ability to learn the technical skills because they are by definition quite technical. I think there'll be a very small number of people who are in the Venn diagram, in the middle bit. And I think organizations would do well to look at the three pools: the technical, the leadership, and the people in the middle. Because if you put all your eggs in one basket, I don't think your organization will be setting itself up to be successful, just because there aren't going to be enough people who have those skills right in the middle to be technical and to have leadership skills. And that's the problem. The problem at the moment that I see in organizations is that too many times the very technical people, the people who are technically good at their jobs, are promoted into leadership positions because you're the best person at this and therefore you can go and lead the team that does that. I think that's a very dangerous game because the leader is expected to do more than the technical side of the role. And I think as work becomes more technologically focused, we need to place more and more emphasis on leading the people who are doing the technical roles.
Oh, that's an interesting perspective. I appreciate your point of view and completely comprehend that one. Um, thanks for your thoughts, David. Shall I move on to the question number 6?
Yeah. Let's do it. Yeah.
The development in artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning, which is neural networks, has overpaced the human brain's evolution in recent years, and it is progressing towards neuromorphic computing. Additionally, the computing power has been advanced at the trillion times the actual computing capacity of an initial computer, and it is forwarding towards quantum computing. That's the information, but in that scenario, how do you think human beings will ever be able to lead a future workforce predominantly comprising of artificial intelligence, machine learning, or deep learning enabled robots, virtual assistants, or digital workforce? Because I think where a human brain has a limited capacity, whereas a computer could have 1,000 times larger storage and computing capacity, and on top of that, it would be learning on its own. It's a long thing, but the major question is again, how do you think human beings will ever be able to lead a future workforce predominantly comprising of AI-enabled robots, VAs, and DWS, digital workforces?
Because Riz, I come from also come from an HR background and a psychology background, and I question the premise of that question. When you look at human interaction
Yeah,
and human emotion and the human condition and human situations, I question how that can ever be left, the management and leadership of that human condition and people can ever not be done by humans. So I think management and leadership is innately can only innately be done by people because of the, I mean, we can talk about the complexity of and development
yeah.
of AI and computers, but actually let's not underestimate the complexity of human emotion and human interaction. And you know, the vast majority of my role, I lead about 60 people in my organization. The vast majority of my role is involved with people management and managing human emotion and people's situations. And I think that is always going to be the role of the manager and the leader. So I don't think that can ever be automated. I don't think management and leadership can ever be done by AI, simply because the human brain and the myriad of emotions and the myriad of reactions is something that is not AI-able, in my view.
No, no, thanks. That look, I agree whatever you are saying in the sense that because it's your perspective and your point of
Yeah.
view based on your experience,
I
knowledge.
mean, do you agree with that, Riz? You're an expert in AI. I
Yeah,
just I don't think you can manage a team of
I
20 or 30 people, you know, in an automated way.
Yeah, I actually agree to this one because in the sense, hey, first of all, we would certainly we learn to agree to disagree. Yeah. So I agree
Of course.
on this question because that's what I was trying to say that with my previous background with HR, I'm actually I agree with this one that if I'm given a chance, suppose then I will manage the people because I got my own HR skill, empathy, and the because as I said, I mean, emotional intelligence, cultural sensitivity, cultural and cultural in wisdom as well, sort of things. But they, on the other hand, if I have 60% working with reports and VAs and those ones, I'm actually quite happy to manage those ones as well because to work with them, I need to learn new skills, which at the moment I actually have some sort of skills. I think probably at the moment I can, but because the development is so rapid, so I need to learn all the time. So I will keep learning and then I will manage. That's why we were saying we actually discussed this point earlier that the person who will be leading these hybrid workforce will have to have those sort of skills and knowledge and qualification as well, where he will be able to manage human beings, he will be able to manage the digital part as well, the technological advancement reports, VAs, so and also digital workforce. To let you know, because because I work with these things, I am quite comfortable personally. But there will be so many people, and I actually know a few people myself who are quite comfortable working with those machines. And on the other hand, the only thing is most of the people, as we discussed earlier, you actually said yourself that there are people who are happy to work with human beings only. There are people who are happy to work with technological side as well. There are people, and there will be, but because if I think personally, if I'm a future lead, if I need to lead a futuristic organization, I need to have those skills where I will be able to manage both.
Mm. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I think to some degree, my personal view would be that to some degree, I think that's true. But
Yeah,
I definitely think, you know, if you've got a team of 20 people, you know, who are on a manufacturing line, and those 20 people are, you know, operating the machines in an AI capacity, I think managing and leading those people and motivating them and all of those kind of things is involves skills that not everybody would have, and you would need development for, and not everybody would want to do those kind of things.
Yeah. Once I will finish today's discussion and interview, I will actually send you a link of my article. It's on LinkedIn.
Yeah, that's great.
It is,
That'd be really interesting.
yeah, yeah. I think probably it will give you a little bit more about the same discussion.
Yeah, great.
Cheers.
That'd be good.
Thanks very much. So thanks to David for this great response. I'm glad actually to listen to your astounding views as well. Number 7 question I got. As the CEO of Institute of Managers and Leaders in that capacity, and as per your understanding, can you please elaborate at this point on how ready Australian managers and leaders are for the futuristic organizations that will employ a hybrid workforce in a hybrid working environment? Hybrid working environment is where working from different locations, including working from home.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think we are in Australia. We are as advanced and as ready as other places. Okay, so I don't think we're necessarily behind other countries. I think we have some advantages. So I think the geographical size of Australia means that many managers and leaders are well used to remote working. They're well used to managing teams who might be over in Western Australia, who might be in Melbourne. I think we're well used to the tyranny of managing the tyranny of distance and tyranny of size. I think in many cases we are, because the workforce tends to be relatively diverse. And when I say diverse, I mean, I'm from England and I've moved to Australia. We are from different places. And by the way, I don't want to overemphasize Riz that diversity, because I don't think we're especially diverse at a management and leadership level. We tend to be mainly white and mainly male. So I think there's an awful long way to go towards true diversity. I don't think we're especially, as a workforce and as a leadership community, I don't think we're especially match fit, if you like, for the Asian marketplace, whether that be China or Southeast Asia or India. I don't think we're particularly culturally diverse. So I think we have some way to go. When it comes to technology, that I don't know how technologically fit we are. So I don't know, when it comes to AI, how advanced the Australian workforce would be. My sense is that we're not particularly advanced. But I would think that you would have more of a view on that from me. But for the future of work, I think because of the size and because we're used to distance and things like that, and we're used to using technology to overcome those issues, I don't think we're in a particularly bad place, but I do believe we could do a lot better.
Yeah.
What's your view when it comes to AI? What's your view?
Thanks very much for David. Yeah, I actually agree with you. I like the wording you said. I mean, we are not necessarily behind. This probably very good explanation of the situation. It says all, because we are not behind, but still actually we need to catch up. We have something to go for. So because I mean, we got a very big advantage. We got a big space in here, and but overall we need to actually be proactive rather than waiting for something to happen. Because overall the managers and leaders, they are a bit behind, in the sense because the organizations are not very behind. They are a bit behind, but when managers and leaders, they actually probably need to go a bit far. They are a bit, it's my understanding, but you are the best person to discuss this thing or to have an opinion on this one. But as per my understanding, it looks to me the managers and leaders are a bit behind. Organizations are a bit ahead of them. Because at the moment, as I was saying, the mindset, they need to actually think on this one. They need to start thinking on this one, that they can't avoid it. They have to embrace the transformation
Mm,
for the digitalization. The organizations are going a bit ahead, but they are probably thinking that the IT people will be able to manage them, and they are trying to keep it towards the IT. The IT people are not there for the overall efficiency of the organization. They can run the infrastructure, but they are not there for the
mm.
productivity. So this is my point of view. Overall, but still, I don't think, I mean, we are very far behind, but the managers and leaders, they need to catch up a lot. This is my perception.
I think there's a certain amount of education that needs to happen,
Yeah.
and I think potentially, perhaps potentially the pandemic and the change in, let's take, the change in retail, for example, the rise of Amazon and home delivery, and home delivery of food and transport, and Uber and all those kind of things. Perhaps the pandemic will accelerate the view that just this change is coming much more quickly than perhaps people thought maybe 6 or 9 months ago.
True, I agree. Actually, it happened. It actually is happening, and it happened. If the future has been rushed on us, and it was a good
That's
thing,
true.
rather than waiting for 5 years, it actually happened all together in 5 6 months time. This was,
Yeah,
I'm really happy for that one.
yeah.
A wonderful discussion. I think IML members must be delighted to listen to this. I do not know whether they agree with me or not, but with you, probably they will certainly be. And I'm also sure that the managers and leaders across Australia will be pleased to know this, that as they need to make it what they need to make it as a priority to get ready for the not too distant future. I hope so. My
So
next
do I.
yes, my next question, David. Any other thoughts? This is the last question though. Any other thoughts surrounding future organizations, businesses, and our capacity to lead a hybrid workforce and transform the organizations strategically and culturally as well, where the innovative technologies will play a significant role in productivity due to high digitalization at workplaces?
Mm. Look, I think my final thought, Riz, and by the way, this has been a really interesting discussion. My final thought is, and it comes back to, and again, we may slightly disagree here, which is great, because I think disagreement is conversation starting, and I think anything that starts conversations is a really good thing and a good dynamic. My view is this, and my parting thought would be this. I think in the conversation about digitalization and AI, I think we have to remember that at the very basic level, the fundamental level, we're talking about people. So where you've got machines, you've got people that are operating the machines or designing the machines or putting them together. And wherever you have people, you need managers and leaders. And my absolute fundamental view is you can only automate management and leadership so far. At
Yes.
the end of the day, there's the human condition and emotions, and that you have to motivate people to want to work, um, and to want to work in certain sectors and doing certain things. And that is always going to be the role of managers and leaders. So that management and leadership skill and attribute that we started off talking about is only going to be is only going to have the spotlight shone on it more and more. And my view, and the view of the Institute, is management and leadership skill is going to be as fundamentally crucial to productivity gain in the future under an automated or hybrid world as it is under a non-automated and non-hybrid world. So the future for us is in increasing management and leadership skill. You'd expect me to say that because I work for the preeminent leadership institute in the world, but you cannot automate management and leadership. It comes down to skill. That's my view.
No, thanks for your perspective and view, and I really admire for that one, and also I respect your views because we are disagreeing on for the good. Like we had a
Yeah,
good
of course.
discussion. I actually learned your view. I try to provide my understanding as well. And I'm happy to learn a different perspectives on different perspective of yours on different things. And amazing anyway. I mean, overall discussion, I'm happy for the discussion. Very well balanced argument there for the last one, and evidence-based clues as well to support your point of view. Thank you so much, David, for your valuable time and precious thoughts and input. Much appreciate that. I think the session has been tremendously enriched and informative and inspiring to think more openly and adapt to new leadership styles. Again, I would say, and upskill concerning more innovative technologies relevant to the future workforce and workplaces. For the audience, any questions or comments, please use the contact details in front of you on your screen. And at the very end, I would like to thank David again. Thank you very much, David, and have a great day. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Riz. I really enjoyed that. It was a fascinating discussion, and thank you for your continued membership, and we'll talk again.
You are welcome, and it's my pleasure. Thank you very much. Bye for now.